everybody, this is Snarist, and welcome back to the continuation of my Devil May Cry 3 hard difficulty walkthrough with no upgrades, no items, and on yellow mode as Dante. And this mission is pretty simple. This is mission 14. It does have a couple of tricky moments here and there, but for the most part this mission is very, very easy. Definitely not a problem whatsoever. The next mission you probably want to pay a bit more attention to, because I almost do no fighting. There's a couple of essential sequences where I'm fighting, but otherwise, yeah, I'm just skipping everything that I can and just moving straight on with the puzzle, because the entire mission is one giant puzzle. Definitely one of the tricky ones if you lose your way, because you can get lost really easily in that mission. That's why it's my least favourite, all things considered. There's nothing in particular about it that pisses me off compared to some other missions, but it's just the layout of the mission itself. It just feels needlessly complicated and like a waste of time. I respect what it was trying to do, but I just wish there was a bit more to it if you were going to, instead of making it confusing, just... By the way, this here technically is a collection of a blue orb fragment, but because we haven't been collecting them, it's not going to make any full blue orb. It's one of those things that you can technically avoid it if you're careful enough, but yeah. So you want to pick up Beowulf, go back to the divinity statue, equip it, and when you equip it you got to break that combat adjudicator, and if you pick up the fragment it's okay, it's not a big deal. Remember, it's only if you pick up enough blue orb fragments to create a whole blue orb that technically the challenge run is, you know, is kind of null and void now, unless you want to go out of your way to begin every mission by taking hits from something and losing 1 bar of health, just to play fair. So this fight here is a little awkward, a little weird because the camera plays up, but yeah, these shield things are annoying. I don't even know who thought this was a good idea, and they're being unusually aggressive, because usually for me they're quite passive, but if you try to jump over them then they'll stab up and hit you. It doesn't always work, but they're surprisingly very flexible when turning around. But they give you a bit of green orbs and white orbs, so all sphere. They don't take that much to kill. Sort of bait them out if you can, or look away from them. That's a good way to bait them. Sometimes you just have to move around a couple of times just to, you know, get them to separate, or get them to line up perfectly so you can hit both of them at the same time. But to me, this is where a lot of Devil May Cry 3's weaker elements start to sink in, where you've got a lot of enemies that just can't be comboed and they're there just to be annoying. And when you start putting them together with other enemies that are meant to be comboed in later missions, on, let's say, Dante Must Die difficulty, that's when it becomes really annoying to deal with them, because they've got way more health, they've got a higher resistance, and they don't flinch to your attacks at all. So now we're on a wagon ride here. It's a very short one, we only have a few enemies to fight, and we've got a Reaper as well, which you're going to have to pay attention to because this arena here is not very big, and with how much black smoke and all the rogues it has, the Reaper definitely is going to cause a bit of a problem. But you also got a few of those sins that create the sand blasts as well. So just remember that when you hear that sort of bell toll sound and you see the ripple in the ground, that means it's going to come up and attack. If you've got Trickster, you can avoid this pretty easily by just jump dashing, especially if your Trickster's at level 2. But I've got Swordmaster on now because I know I'm going to be fighting some more of those chess pieces in this upcoming sequence, where instead of going back to the room that should be Beowulf's boss fight, it's going to be a series of tunnels where you have to beat a bunch of the chess pieces in order to move forward. And so I like to use the Beowulf with Rebellion to use Swordmaster style to keep in the air while getting continuous attacks and getting in some nice shots, because Beowulf does a lot of damage, and you'll see me properly utilise it now. So I'm pretty much never going to be using any other weapon going forward for a while, until we get to mission 18, where I start to mix it up with you know, fighting the different bosses in the boss rush mode, and so I'll be using things like Cerberus, and I'll be using Royal Guard. But this is pretty simple, just move from room to room, clear out these statues and the chess pieces. Now, as you just saw before, when you enter the room for the first time, follow whatever pattern you can that unlocks the doors, and move to the right and come into this room here, because you're going to need to anyway. And then when you're finished in this room, you go back out the same way that you came in, and then you move forward again, and you're going to be fighting in another room. Now off to the left there's a vital star item you can pick up, but you don't have to do that fight in order to move forward. It's an optional fight. So you instead ignore that and move to the right. So go into this room here, this is going to be a fight, but there's a door to the left and a door to the right. You'll want to move to the door to the right when you're finished here, because the door to the left is just an unnecessary fight you don't need to do, and because of the whole no item stipulation, I don't need to do it. But yeah, put Beowulf's Starfall to good use, and if you have Swordmaster like me, use that pouncing attack. It's a little awkward to time with quick swapping in mid-air compared to Agni and Rudra in Rebellion, but Beowulf can still do some good work. So ignore the left door, go to the right, and then you just got another couple of essential fights in here and in the next room, and there'll be a blue orb fragment in your way, but again, if you happen to pick it up by chance, as long as it doesn't give you a blue orb, that's fine. But you can jump over it and avoid it if you want to, just to be on the safe side. Now, I think I should mention as well about some of these chess pieces, you need to be careful of the knights, which is these things here, the horses. Now the knights will jump up and down pretty rapidly and come down on top of you, so you just need to make sure you avoid it whenever possible. I found them to be one of the more annoying ones, because they've got a swipe attack that moves to the left. If you roll to the right, then you'll usually be alright, but sometimes they can still catch you out because the hitboxes are a little bit weird. I also found them to be a little bit awkward when you're jumping away from them, because when you're trying to jump away from them, you might accidentally get near them enough to keep mashing jump, and you might accidentally get caught on enemy step with them, because they're some of the easiest enemies to use enemy step on. And so you might get stuck halfway up the spine of this horse here, and they'll end up hitting you when you try and jump away. And these here, I think, are supposed to be bishops. Are these sort of mages, sorcerer things. When you see the little balls floating around them, keep away from them, because they'll just throw fire at you from a distance. If you let them stay around too long though, they will heal some of the other pieces. So you should definitely prioritize them as well. We haven't encountered them yet, but we're going to get to the rooks, which are the castles, and they fire lasers on the floor from all four directions. And when I said before about how you can sometimes be jumping away and mashing X to get away from them, but you accidentally get caught halfway up on the surface of the pieces and that you end up jumping forward. I mean, by the way, this shit here, this makes me wish that I'd used Trickster instead, because yeah, now you've got Enigmas that use the red projectiles, and these things do so much damage, and they just, every time they hit you, they knock you backwards, and they just don't stop firing it. So I got sick of it and taunted to get my DT back, and I just ran for it. I was just so sick of these things. These things suck so much, and they use the red projectiles more often in later difficulties. They're just really terrible to fight. But yeah, I'll talk more about the rook pieces in a couple of chapters from now. And there's one other piece to talk about, or a couple of other pieces to talk about as well, but it's more so for a mission 18 thing. That's the end of this mission, pretty simple as you can see. And I'll see you guys in the next one, where it's going to be more of a puzzle and trying to figure out where to go, so I can show you where to go exactly to escape, just so you can get it over and done with faster.